Anatomical Gangster. I am your host, Sue Hitzman. Today's guest is not your average movement maven. She's a fascia-loving, science-weaving, tantric-rooted anatomical visionary. I am so excited today to talk to Michelle Nayeli Bouvier. She's going to be presenting at the Fascia Research Congress with an abstract titled Biotensegrity-Informed Movement, integrating neuromyofascial research into clinical practice. And we're diving into her fascination with fascia, the magic of biotensegrity, and what it means to be truly resilient in body and being. Michelle does not just teach movement, she translates the language of spiraling intentional networks into practical embodiment. Her work dances between ancient wisdom and biomechanical innovation. We're about to unravel how fascia is the missing link in it all. Now, again, if you guys are new to this podcast, make sure that you guys click that subscribe button, share this with your friends, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Michelle Nayeli Bouvier. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on Anatomical Gangster. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
I'm so grateful to be here with you, Sue, and so nice to really connect. I've loved your work for so long.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I want to start because you are about to present at the Fascia Research Congress, which is actually how I came about finding out about you. And I don't want to say that I've been, stalking you on the internet trying to figure out some stuff about you, but I might have been. So, can you just tell us what sparked your fascination with fascia in the first place?
It's hard for me to even remember the first initiation, but I think it was a friend of mine who was personal friends with Gil Headley and Tom Myers from like the 80s, maybe, and told me about their work. And I started to attend lectures from Gil when he visited San Diego in the early 2000s. And I think that's when I just started to follow their work. And I can't remember any other like one specific initiation, except when I had my own like body breakdown and injuries. I started to really go deeper into trying to understand how to repair and fix myself.
That seems like so many of us who are in the industry of healing arts. It's the same kind of story. I mean, it was the same for me. At peak of fitness career, all of a sudden the bottom of my foot hurt me, and I'm like, what did I step on glass? How old were you when you actually found that injury and then started to look a little more deeply into what was going on?
About 20 years ago, so in my mid
Yeah.
20s.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think we're lucky when we find those discoveries in our 20s because I think it really gives us a head start on realizing that you can do things for the short term, but if you're in it for the long game, you got to take care of yourself and learn about self-care early on.
Yeah, I look back now and I'm so grateful for that. But at the time, it was pretty soul wrenching and heartbreaking because I know, like if you love being in your body and you can't do like the basic stuff, it was so hard, but it really sent me on the path I'm on right now. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I mean, it really is so fantastic when you can come to those things. So, I'm going to be your moderator at the Fascia Research Congress, which is going to be really great that we're having this conversation now. So, your abstract, I was reading it, it dives into biotensegrity-informed movement. So, how does that model reshape the way clinicians, movement pros approach the body? And what do you hope attendees will walk away with after your presentation?
Well, my context is having taught group classes and private one-on-one sessions for a long time. And for me, coming out of the yoga world, it completely changes the rules of the road of alignment. And in working one-on-one, I am a gyrotonic trainer currently, and
Ah,
work with a lot of people who have done Pilates and other types of training that is also very form-based. So they care a lot about what's the right form. And I think biotensegrity blurs the lines, number one, about what's the right form, because there's
hmm.
never one right way for everyone. And also to see the balance of tone and pressure and force in a volume rather than in a grid or flat planes. And it's so sneaky. And so that's just so ingrained in us in practitioners, in clients, and sometimes I'm so used to it now that I forget how ingrained it is. So I'm working with clients to like, well, what about, moving in all three planes instead of trying to stay stacked or
Mhm.
square, these kinds of things, which are actually really simple to shift when we get down to it, but it's just not the ground we're all sharing and standing on.
Yeah, I can really relate to that because I saw in some of your writing, you really kind of define things in this sort of spiraling way. And I very much relate to that because I think we get so biomechanical about things, and we're not a biomechanical model. And this concept of biotensegrity and this more whole body system and working in spirals is just so important because while, and everybody listening, yes, we do walk forward in life, but really walking in and of itself is a succession of spirals. Right. Yeah. So it seems like we kind of need a little bit more of that education. Yeah. And gyrotonics speaks to that so well.
It does, although, I mean, I've not said this publicly, but there's still a lot in gyrotonic that's flat.
Say
So
more.
So I study a lot in the Axis syllabus movement research community, which I don't know if you've heard about it,
Tell
is
me more about that. Yeah. What is that?
incredible. To me, it's the place I have found the most inspiration and also the most knowledge that is forthcoming. I don't want to use the word cutting edge because I feel like that's a little pretentious, but because there's so many edges, there's so many places that we're learning so much. The Axis syllabus is a group of movement nerds and embodied folks who uh, it's not a method, it's not a brand. It's more of a list, a dictionary of how to be in a human body in 3 dimensions in gravity on a spinning planet, basically. Looking a lot at walking and gait as the primary shaper of our anatomy, and then applying it to everything. And it's open source and always ongoing and tested. And it was instigated by a man named Frey Faust, who also had a body breakdown. There's a whole other story about that, and started a journey for the last almost 30 years of collecting information on the body, on biomechanics, on physics, on everything he could get his hands on, and putting it into this list that is always growing. And so I've been a part of that study community for 10 years strong and 15 years a little bit. And
Mhm.
so that really is what changed my understanding of volumes and spirals and getting out of the flatness of things.
I love that. It's so wonderful, and I think this is what's so exciting about the Fascia Congress also is the community that is there. People who are just like fascia. It's such a connecting, integrating, communicating system, and people who really get it and are in there, you find these discoveries, and it's like, gosh, they sound like what we're talking about. Oh, they sound like what we're talking about. I'm like, it's because we're all talking about the same thing. And I think that's like so exciting of where we are today compared to, again, that very biomechanical model that I got introduced to in the 70s and 80s. And now I think to myself, gosh, it really was not a disservice, but it's a very incomplete model of what really is, especially because our bodies are so not symmetrical. We are so not single-sided. So I think it gives way to so much more when you think of the experience of the human being as being more of a process than a, I don't know, thing to fix or something, right?
I
Yeah.
always use this quote from Tom Myers that we are not pathologies, we are patterns that,
Yeah.
continue. And so, yeah, that idea of always changing or always adapting is really key to the whole system. And I do want to say that I know in the concept of biotensegrity that it is, and like you're saying, there's all these fractal layers that we can look at and see the same qualities or the same properties in all these different levels. And I am part of the Embodied Biotensegrity community, which I'm really excited to meet those people in person because they've been
Yeah.
online for so long. And a lot of those folks are speaking at kind of a different frame. And because I've come from yoga and working think with people who are thinking of bones and muscles and alignment, to me, I'm really looking at, well, what on that level of skeleton do we need to consider so that biotensegrity then is, because we can pull it apart. I mean, it always is in some ways, but so that it can be a supportive function rather than something that is distorted in the distribution of tone and tension. And I'm going to guess that the listeners are able to follow what I'm talking about.
Maybe, and I think, I mean, some of our listeners might not actually have heard of biotensegrity. I'm sure a lot of them have, but do you want to kind of give everybody a little bit of an understanding of what you kind of think of as biotensegrity and to define that?
Sure. And I'd love to see what you have to add to it too.
Sure.
So tensegrity as a model of the balance of push and pull or tension and compression was a term coined by Buckminster Fuller, and biotensegrity is the concept that we can use a tensegritous idea as a model for how our structure, our architecture works rather than a mechanical model of muscles and bones. It is a volumetric balance of distribution of push and pull or tone or force. And one of the things that was kind of mind-blowing to me about a year ago was that we're actually not biotensegrity structures. It's a model like everything else, right? And all models are wrong, and it's more helpful than the mechanical biomechanics. And also there is something more maybe in for some people in the bio part that is life force itself, that is that always adapting, emerging, changing thing. There's like a disassemble and a reassemble. If we were truly tensegrity structures, we wouldn't actually move on our own. We would just be like a pop-up tent and stay there.
Well, I think that would be if we were a tensegrity model, but
Yes,
in the biological matrix,
right.
I mean, the thing about biology is that it's ever changing. And so I always just try to explain it like, unlike a basic building design where you have continuous compression forces that you stack one atop another until there's enough force to hold up a building or something that's going to remain isolated and never move. A tensegrity model has discontinuous compression elements in a continuous tensional network. And that fine balance of tension compression management is the job of fascia. Fascia on at a macroscopic level is what's holding our bones and our muscles and everything in place. But on a microscopic level, it's actually what's giving tension and compression forces to our cells, which is what allows cells to communicate. So when we call ourselves like a neuroelectrochemical semiconducting system, this is the system that's igniting our force. So dare I be so bold to say that maybe the fascial system might actually be the life force we call chi. And that's something that I talk about a lot. And I think that biotensegrity gives a little bit of that vitality because you need tension. Life's not supposed to be this easy, airy, fairy thing where you're just supposed to float through life. If you're not being challenged and you don't have grief or the things you don't like, or you never get hurt, you never know what it is to fully care, to fully become in your
Mm.
body, to love, to find joy and experience. You wouldn't go after it in life, right?
Oh, I love taking it to that level. And I noticed at the Congress that there's a handful of presentations on fascia and consciousness. And I know Joanne Avison talks about that a lot. And having yoga been a part of my life for over 30 years, to me, that makes so much sense.
Oh, that's right.
I love
Exactly.
how the science and the spirit meets. I'm so excited to see what others have to say about that.
Yeah, you're also talking about that you have this yoga background, but I was also seeing this kind of bridge of traditions that you blend tantric yoga with fascia
Mhm.
science, and it seems very seamlessly. So how do these, maybe even, let's talk a little bit about tantric, but also how do these traditions inform one another in your work? Where does the nervous system fit into it? And how do you help your students honor its role in resilience?
Should we start with the nervous system first?
You can start, yeah, maybe let's actually talk maybe a little bit about tantric yoga. What is
Yoga.
tantric yoga? And then how have you taken this fundamental, very traditional concepts of tantric yoga and actually integrated fascial science into it?
Yeah, well, there's two main pieces to that. And one is that the tantric period was a long 1,000-year period that usually gets kind of skipped over or lost to history when we're learning about yoga history or in yoga teacher trainings. Taught yoga teacher trainings for a long time. I've seen lots of curricula. And it's really a sad thing to miss because that is where we find the oldest so far known records of embodied practice. Because in that time and context, Tantra was revolutionary to be a non-dual perspective on life rather than spirit and matter being separate. We needed to transcend and get out of the body and this world. That it was one, really, truly. And so embodiment and phenomenal life and experiences of the senses could be gateways to the state of yoga or the state of connection and oneness. And so the body as a way, as a pathway or a tool for practice to get to that state became possible for the first time. And I happen to be very close to a Sanskritist who's been researching the first verse that we've seen on Kundalini. And
Mhm.
the concepts of Kundalini and the subtle body arise from the same tantric period and practice where movement arose. And these texts have descriptions of movement that are not very clear. Like it's not like put your right hand here, but it talks about dynamic, flowing, mandala, circulation, undulation, getting up and down, which I really like that one, like up and down from the floor, like this very wavy, undulating type of movement.
Mhm.
So when I started to learn about that, it really freed up what was authentic and traditional and what felt honoring still. So it gave me a lot of liberation in that way. And then philosophically, Tantra teaches that we are all one and also infinitely diverse and unique, all connected, all in a web of relationship where the whole web connects and affects and matters. To me, that is the same as neuromyofascia, as ecology, as what physics is finding, that it's not about the particles, it's about the in between, the interstitial, the relational. And so to me, that ecology was my like academic background technically. So to me, it's all like different frames of that same teaching of oneness, connection, uniqueness, which, can we just learn that, humanity?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's nice because it really, I feel like fascia really puts pieces together. It fills a missing puzzle piece where all of these ancient practices, well, I've looked at, you when you're reading practice of yogic writing and you don't see the word fascia in there, but they're talking about it. You know what I mean? They're just not saying that word. But then again, from other conversations I've had with people in the fascial community where we're trying to create a definition for it, I think John Sharkey was saying, yeah, now we're thinking of two definitions. And I'm like, that sounds like a nightmare. I think that I said, I'm a girl. I like things in threes, right? Like if you have one choice, you really have no choice. Like this is it, right? And that's it. You have two choices. You're actually in a bit of a dilemma. And there's a lot of arguments that happen when you only have two choices. But when you have three, which is like the great pyramid of connecting, right? This really gives us an opportunity to look at fascia depending upon how you are talking about it. Are you talking about it as a tissue that is connecting things? That's why they call it connective tissue, right? Are we talking about it as an organ, a sensory organ, how we sense, interoception, proprioception? Or are we talking about it as a system of cellular communication? Now we're going down into quantum biology and you're getting into the spiritual point of fascia because I also think that when you meet somebody and you're like, they're just vibrating at that same frequency as me, you know, like, I mean, Michelle and I are meeting right now for the first time, and I'm like, can I get her into one of our or one of our events, like one of our retreats? Like she would be a great guest, you know, like, so you just start thinking out of, you just know when you find your people. And I feel like the fascial community, when you get there, is like you're going to see, it's like the community you're going to be in is like, I love this community, and you will go out of there literally electrified, literally supercharged from all of the science and all of the people that are also putting these pieces together.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, to jump a little bit even further into this sort of esoteric overlap, one of the things from the tantric texts that I find has there's something there, but I'm not sure what yet, is that, when I talk about biotensegrity in movement, I think of it as tuning an instrument. I know I'm not the only one
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
uses that term.
Agreed.
And so when you say you find your people and you're vibing and you feel through, I think of it as a sixth sense, all of
Yeah.
the neuroception and things like that. Um, in the tantric texts, the practice that spontaneously emerged, or all this movement sort of came out as an expression, was a sound resonance practice.
Mm.
So there's something about, all the words that work for music work, right?
That's
Tuning
right.
and resonance and vibration and da, da, da. So I don't know, I'm not a musician. I've been around a lot, but I'm not one myself. Um, but there's a lot I think that we are going to learn that's going to be even more exciting.
Oh, I cannot wait. I just like, I'm so excited to get there and see who's there and have great conversations. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, some of your contributions, because you created I think it's called the Kutila School of Embodied Resilience. So talk a little bit about that. What does embodied resilience mean to you beyond the classroom? How do you move people out of rigid alignment and into this adaptive spiral movement?
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's a few levels. One is the growing understanding that our body is one of maybe the easiest tool for regulation in the moment. And there's so many tools to use for that, humming and all the polyvagal things and awareness of where you are in your seat and things like that. And I like to share the mechanisms, at least the ones that we know.
Mhm.
Why? Because those tools are wonderful, and I think understanding the mechanisms, we can make them more useful and personal. So understanding how to use the body in the moment, and then understanding ways to choose one's personal practice on a regular daily rhythm that is both self-care for the physical body and the mental, emotional, nervous system body, and that sort of ritual of connection. The can never take that yogic part away from me.
Mhm.
And from my background in ecology, the state of the climate and ecosystem, the biosphere has been always like in at the root of my heart. And I just want to even say that I've been feeling a lot. Joanna Macy, I don't know if you know her. She's
Mhm.
a amazing, speaker on basically the fascia of life, like the connecting of it all. And she's in her passing right now. And I just feel like that way of learning how to be inside of ourselves, to be in good relation at this time, like personal adaptability, resilience, shared relational collective, like the more we can have that, the more we'll be able to find the next best choice and the next best solution for like, really challenging times.
Yeah, and I think this is in so many ways a bit challenging, because I see a lot of the 20-year-old young adults kind of having a little bit of a hard time taking flight. And I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I was out the door as soon as, like I could be out of the house. I was like, bye, and off you went on your life. Graduated college at 20, going down to New York City and thinking like, I don't know, it was all going to be easy. And then suddenly by the time I'm 23, being depressed, and my dad saying, like, why are you so depressed? I said, God, I just thought by now, I'd be like making 100 grand and having like a personal driver bringing me to work, and I'd be this. He's like, what on earth? Like, why would you even think that? And I said, well, because of you guys. And he's like, I didn't tell you that's how life was going to be. But I guess I just always thought that once you got out there and you adulted, that like things would fall into place. But the shit does not just fall into place. Like you have to have some tenacity. You've got to have some fire and passion and then commit to it. You've got to commit to wanting to have your curiosity emerge. And I think that that's also part of the tantric practice, is getting so deep into the essence of who you are. And the only way you can get in there is to tap into that fascial net. But you're also talking about the nervous system. How do you inlay the nervous system into the conversation to your clients? How do you explain it?
Um, I mean, one of the main things is I noticed the difference of getting in our head when we're in a practice
Mhm.
or really listening to the body. And we think we're listening to the body, but how many times, I'm really encouraging them to watch when they're really thinking about and guiding the movement from a cognitive idea place rather than a felt sense place. So this simple cue to just always redirect to the felt sense. Now, I think that learning how to listen to it is what the practice is about, learning how to understand what we're feeling and translate it sort of accurately.
Mhm.
So that's the main thing. And it's so simple, but it's also just not how we're taught. And so it's such a shift for so many people.
Yeah.
That one for sure. And I think just the understanding that, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but neuromyofascia is a very accepted term, I think, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's probably going to have more and more and more added to it, like some do say even now. And from a yogic perspective, there's so many teachings on, well, the physical is one layer, and then we have mental, emotional, energetic, just different words, different frames.
Mhm.
And so I also really see that the more we can tune the physical body, the biotensegrity, the more our nervous system is also tuned. I'm so interested in the tension on the physical level corresponding to the tension in the nervous system and vice versa, and that it's a two-way street so that we can be really specific also about working with different qualities of physical feeling that then impact our nervous system and our mindset. Like, do we need surrender and support, or do we need, to process and churn and do something rhythmic and contralateral and like quicker, fast, we can lose ourselves in the rhythm? Or do we need to do something with, strength and clarity for focus, those kinds of things? So how can we use the physical body to impact the nervous system because we're working with the one system?
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think we've got to, if you really want to get out of pain, you have to get in your body to get out of pain. And I think all of the things that we're trying to tell people today, it really sounds to me, like again, you can't think your way through life. You really have to feel your way through it. If you're not
Mhm.
feeling your way through it, you're already overthinking because your mind is got you, that monkey mind's got you, and you're not really in the heart of the matter. And our heart is really where we change and transform. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's such a big deal. So what about, you do seem to have such a great grasp of fascia. If you thought fascia could talk, what do you think it would say to most people?
I think it would hum.
That's so great. That's so great. I love that. It would. I think, I find sometimes when I am just in my house, I am humming, I'm singing. Sometimes, I have a song that I say, in your home, you can sing at the top of your lungs. In your home,
Mhm.
when you're alone, you can sing and sing and sing. It's true. Nobody's hearing you, and you can just release it. And I think that more people need to do that. I think more people need to hug and need to hum and need to sing. And I think that they would feel better. Everybody feels better after a hug. It's so true,
Mhm.
right? So what
Mhm.
about, what's lighting you up right now because it sounds like you've got, decades behind you of this deepening self-practice. Where are you right now that's lighting you up and things that you're looking forward to achieving?
Well, the idea of fascia and consciousness for sure, like the bigger conversation and listening and tuning into that is one thing. It's always fascinating and challenging, but I love the challenge to be able to language these things because it's been 10 years and it's now I feel like where I live, alignment, especially in yoga, is really, really the foundation and the most kind of common approach. And so being the only voice to like suggest other things has been um it's like turning the Titanic. So in the last 10 years, I feel like it's finally starting to shift. And I have an intimate mentorship with some students who like really get it and are doing it in their own um, regular classes, and having that as an ongoing kind of little web, our little node is starting to spread. So working with them and their trial and error is really, really fun and fulfilling. And my plan is to write a book. And I've kind of sort of cleared my schedule. And of course, like right when I cleared my schedule, all these other things just kind of like fell into them.
Mm.
So I haven't quite gotten to the rhythm of what that looks like, but I've done some work. So that's where personally I want to be spending my time and creativity. And I don't have a timeline for that yet, but send me all the good you do.
Yeah, writing books, you just basically need to lock yourself in a room, not have your phone, and turn all of the things that could distract you off
Yeah.
and set up the time to do it. I mean, as an author, it takes a real dedication, and it's going to be at least 1 year of your life, if not three.
Yeah, I'm thinking on the 2 or 3.
It takes a long time. So let's just talk quickly like about your the session that you are doing. Tell me a little bit more about what is it that you're going to really talk about? What do you hope the attendees are really going to walk away after the presentation? What's the real piece of it?
To work with the felt sense with people to understand. I think we do, but I think it's always useful to speak to the understanding of the nervous system feeling safe first before any change can happen, how the body can do that, but primarily that it's time to change the biomechanics and alignment. Um, Frey Faust from the Oxysyllabus has been working with, I think, Robert Schleip, talking about creating a new language for biomechanics. I don't know if that's been part of conversation with anybody else, involved in organization. Instead of the words that we have, which are inherently monoplanar, which are inherently not reality. We
Mhm.
always say, well, it's flexion and rotation. Well, why don't we just have one word that just puts that idea, so we don't even have to do the cognitive idea that, or like
Mm.
math, that we have two things happening at once. And so Frey's proposing foldation.
Say that again?
Fold and rotation.
Oh,
Foldation.
foldation. That's
So you
nice.
have an anterior foldation and a posterior foldation,
Hmm.
and medial and lateral rotation, and some things like that, where once you start to sort of think that way, it changes your whole set point. So I'm really interested in how we can start to unwind how sneaky and how deep all the biomechanics that we've learned really are. And so
Yeah.
that's what I want people to go away with, is like, how can we like just extract ourselves
Mm.
from
Yeah.
from
It's
that.
so hard. I
Right.
mean, I think because there's so much historical information there. And I think what I'm hearing you say, and I think a lot of us agree, that the language that we choose to use or have chosen to use, sometimes it can really help to afford forward motion, but sometimes it really keeps you stuck
Mhm.
in a model. And you had said it before, I mean, models work. Models are nice ways to explain things, but they aren't actually what is. And when it comes to the human body, we really are a bit of an enigma, a little bit of a mystery as to, how, why do I even look like this? Like, how did I get in here? Like, what am I doing in this body? And I think it's such a gift to have this fleeting moment in skin and being a human to be able to connect because we are really, I feel, spirits in systems in a physical form. For just a moment, we get to taste that physicality and then it's gone. So people who really are not able to live in their bodies. Some people have a hard time being in skin. And I think it's because their spirit is so big that they agree, okay, I'm going to do this. And then they get in here and they're like, gosh, it's so confining. I just want to get out of here. And it's not easy being a human being, not easy being in the physical realm. But I think that what you're talking about and all of these uh, concepts of transforming this biomechanical, like we're parts. And again, with any model, if you keep looking at it, you're going to form a belief that what you're seeing really is. And in anatomy, you can really go ahead and believe that, like this is your bicep, and you can lose sight of the fact that we are not a whole made of parts. It's not true. We are just a whole, period. We've created parts. We've gone in and defined it. It's just like the nervous system. People get very confused when they start learning about the nervous system because there's a lot of nervous systems. And I said, no, no, no. There's really only one nervous system. We just cut it up like we do anatomy so that we can understand it. And you would then believe that each part of the thing does things autonomously, which is yet again another myth that needs a little debunking. Do you think that there's other myths about the body that you think should disappear from our vocabulary?
Mm, I mean, I think I just keep going back to the kind of the same thing that, well, one is that when we say the word alignment, we all know what we're talking about. We're all talking about the same thing. It's really fascinating. I see in trainers that I really respect and really love, and also in the yoga world that I know what they think they're talking about. Just throwing it out like without any understanding of like, well, what do we actually mean?
Yeah.
Um, and especially in practices like yoga where people are coming for a lot of the time healing of some sort, or they are a little bit tuned into like nervous system tending versus just a fitness session or Pilates session. Not saying it's not there, of course, but if we are insisting on flattening over and over and over for years, we actually end up pulling and distorting the forces around the joints, which are so highly innervated that like they're nodes in our nervous system. So then we start to disintegrate the
Yes.
nervous system communication. And so again, just kind of like saying less. I say so much less than I used to. And so I think that's like the main myth is like, what do we actually mean? We are not talking about the same thing. And if we get underneath the hood of the values of what we mean by alignment, that it's this congruency on the macro level of the joints of force distribution, and then all those other layers like all the more subtle non-physical layers then come into play.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Changing words, all language, very fascinated with like what is them behind that
Yeah,
word.
yeah. What do you really mean? Well, and that's the thing is I talk a lot about this idea called ideal alignment. And those of you who will listen to this only and not see me, I'm doing the air quotes with my fingers. I've got bunny ears going. This idea of ideal alignment was really developed on cadavers. And the theory of it is that this is the definition of ideal alignment, is when all of our joints align at their centers, there's going to be minimal force, unnecessary force compression given to any one joint. So that force will be distributed throughout the entire system, so no one joint yields the demand of any motion. This is a nice idea, right?
Good, yeah.
Because joint centralization sounds like a great idea, because when our joints have their place and there's stability in a joint, it can move and morph and adapt, and it can yield the force compression of the body. However, in now 30 years, 35 years of being in movement and study, I've never met one single person who is in ideal alignment. I'm not in ideal alignment. Nobody else that I've ever met, if I go and assess every joint, I'm like hypermobility, and there's compression. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've worked on where they have disc compression, where somebody would say that's a herniated disc, but that may or may not even be causing any problems at all. So I think that there is a an inability for us, if we're not willing to go off of what traditional schools of thought say and expand the understanding back to the roots of where it was with the tantric yogic practice, this concept of union, of really becoming connected to all things and getting out into nature and hugging a tree and walking on grass or getting on the sand. And we as a human race are getting very far away, I think, from the nature of things. And I see that there is an emerging community more and more, much like it was in the 60s. I feel like there is an awakening that is occurring. And I think that there are more people curious to expand their understanding of really embracing being alive. And I think that that's exciting for me. That gives me hope that humanity, maybe we can save it. I hope.
I love that. I'm gonna jump into your hope, but I also see, that at least around me and in the West, what I see and know, and I know that this is true for more places, that embodiment practices of all flavors have just exploded in the last, 10, 20
Decade.
years. And so I think to me, that's part of it. I really truly believe that, this is our easiest way into have those other experiences and feel at home in ourselves and at home in relation to all the things.
That's beautiful. So, Michelle, I ask everybody who comes on Anatomical Gangster the same question, and I'm going to pose it to you. If you could tell somebody something that you've learned in your lifetime, maybe a life lesson that maybe really got you out of a tough time or really shifted your perspective about the human experience, and if they heard it, maybe it would shift them out and very well change the course of their life, what would it be?
Hmm. What's coming to me is like so cliche,
I like
but
cliches. Tell me.
listen to your body. And if you don't know how to listen, one of the things that I has become, one of those life-saving practices is prostration or pranam, which my main yoga teacher Shiva Ray is really on a mission to bring back the inner state of devotion that can get lost in all of the thinking and the fitness of yoga and things like that. And when I have had moments where I don't know what to do and everything seems to be falling away, falling apart, I've lost myself, I'm freaking out, I am having an emotional crisis, you just take it and put it on the earth. Amazing if you can be actually on the earth. Like think of your brain and your heart, mind, brain, and your belly instinct brain, and just like all those centers on the earth, and sometimes weeping and crying into the earth. And then you rise again because everything is a cycle. So that one practice is maybe a way to start listening to your body. And maybe that is the offer, and maybe listen to your body is the reminder.
I think that's it. Yeah, like I said, we said this earlier, right? You can't think your way through life. You really have to feel it. So when you're in that state of everything is falling apart, maybe that is the energy of your life and it trying to shake off the shit that you don't need anymore so that you can amplify your life. So don't be afraid of the hard stuff. Don't cower away from it. You know, if you act in a state of love, things always rise. It's when we act in fear that shit gets kind of fucked up. You know what I mean? So
Yep,
stuff gets a little
yep,
messy, you know? Yeah,
yep.
that's so great. Well, Michelle, I'm so excited to listen to your presentation and hear more about what you have to say. You have such a radiant light to you. And I hope everybody that's listening has enjoyed this conversation. And make sure, again, you subscribe, share this with your friends. And again, if you want to come and hang out with Michelle, myself, and so many other incredible presenters and community members of the fascial research community, come to the Fascia Research Congress, August 10th to the 14th. We will be there. It will be literally illuminating. I'll be doing a pre-con on August the 10th. I know my dear friend Jill Miller will also be doing an early morning pre-con. There are pre-cons in the evening. I'm post-conference with Till Luca and Robert Schleip. It's going to be off the charts. So if you want to get yourself embodied and feel yourself from the inside out, come to the Fascia Research Congress. And again, Michelle, thank you so much for spending a little time with me. It's lovely to meet you.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. I can't wait to give you a real hug in person.
Absolutely. And for everybody, keep your mind open, stay healthy, stay happy, and stay a little gangster. We'll see you next week.